You ask people what got them into game audio, often you'll hear about the guns in Halo or the racing in Forza or something really loud, really crazy, aggressive, or some sci-fi sound design. And yet, for myself, it seems to be ambience. So as someone that's worked on systems for nature documentaries and these games and these games and these games and these and these and these, I gotta say, it's what draws me into games for some reason. There's something about it that I find really fun. Today I'm going to be taking a little bit of a walk through the SWEEJTECH ambience system. I'm going to be walking through a few of the features today that kind of roughly break down into volume constraints and scatter spot organization. Now these two systems kind of work together to determine what bed, if you were, to play under elements and what extra one-shot should fire off. One of the really cool aspects of it is that debug where you can go into your settings menu and turn up your volume, and you immediately get the one-shots that would play in the worlds, even though I'm not playing the game yet, which actually saves me tons of time already. It means that I sort of fly into different areas. I can go inside my building and hear the sound of it inside. I haven't even hit play yet. So if you think about how difficult it is to get ambient systems working, you've got to like hit play, you've got to wait for it to load, you've got to find the right spot, you've got to run like all the way in. It's a big undertaking. So even down to that point, we've started thinking about how to use things. We're on this distant exoplanet somewhere out in the galaxy, and we're with this character, a Gadget, and she's here to check out maybe a research facility, or she's investigating something that's gone wrong, and what is she going to find? Now, I started playing with the system and I immediately found a whole bunch of cool stuff. So I started building this idea and I started throwing some assets at it, and kind of went and ran with it from there. As we're outside, you can hear all these dust movements. I have this little dust bucket of dust samples that are playing, and they're picking different distances, so we don't get too many too close, and they're not all too far away. They don't all play too often. It's very clever. As we come up to the research facility, though, we get something that's kind of luring us in, like, hey, maybe you should check it out. It's interesting in here. Something's gone awry potentially. As we step inside the research facility, all of our bed changes, all of our dusts kind of disappear, or they might still be playing somewhere out there, but they'll disappear in a second as the timer runs out on those. And instead we get these medical equipments. We get some respirators chunking off, and we get some suction things happening, and some beeps and boops and bits and bobs. And I've got a Bachelor of Science, and the best thing I can come up with is bits and bobs. Instead of just staying in this room, I wanted to go a little bit further, and I thought, hey, it'd be cool to know blueprinting. How does the system handle blueprinting? The systems are always great when they're core pieces, but can it do blueprinting? And so I've added this heartbeaty systolic rift thing that is going to take us to a dark world where it's all going to sound a little bit different. Now, that's pretty intense. I'm in this kind of Stranger Things, spooky, dark place, which is very intense, because I have all these elements that are now playing these one-shots that are dark variants of the one-shots that are actually playing above me. Now I could do this with changing reverb, I could do this with new effects, I could do this with new assets, and what's really cool here is that nothing plays on the ground floor. I want them all to be floating, rattling around my head, so it's kind of scary to hear like the building is coming down. So I might think, okay, it's time to get out of here. And as we get out of here, we snap back to day. We leave the medical lab behind. You can see we lose the aspects of the medical lab. We don't hear those suction cups and everything. It just disappears and it's all gone. Now this system works with two distinct parts. First element is this ambience definition. This is a place where you will write what areas you'd like to cover, so that the volumes can just have a simple tag that says, hey, this is a research facility, or this is an exoplanet, this is a dark world, this is a toilet, whatever it might be, and you'll be able to kind of connect one-shots, connect beds and things like that later on. When we look at the actual definition, because this is the enumeration of the ambience types, Once we've filled out those ambience types, we can move into the definitions themselves. Now, the system is really built on these definitions where we say, what area type are you looking to make here? And you can have multiple area types that have the same, so you can have multiple definitions that have the same area type, or you could have one definition per area type. It really depends on what you're going to do. And I was really road testing this system, so I came up with a few unique ways of using it, and they've all got different benefits of different types of games. From here, we're going to have an exterior exoplanet, and it has a sound asset that's going to play whenever I'm inside this exterior. Immediately, if you've built ambient systems before, you might have alarm bells going off like, well, if it has area types, can you only have one area type? What if you're in an apartment building, but you're in a room within the apartment building? You're in sort of the planet, and then the apartment building, and then the building, and then the room, and then the sub-room, or whatever. Well, the point of this system is to have overlapping volumes be permissible. They can even crossfade between them. You can have attenuations, and you can have priority to say the higher priority volumes are actually the ones that play. The only other part that we need to talk about here is these scatter spots, where you have an additional one-shot collection, like a little bucket of one-shots that you could put together. Now, for the first one that I was going to show you here, this exoplanet, it's pretty simple. It's just this dust scatter shot, and inside the scatter shots, I was even lazier than that. I have the same audio asset, but I have some different repeat times and some different distances. What this allows me to do is construct a little local field around the player where I might have a few dust spots that go off very rarely close to me, and as they go further away, they go off a little bit more often. And this is just to push that spatial field out a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting for the player so that we don't have just play random one shot all the time. Indeed, one of the really, really cool things that we can do with these scatter spots, because when you do build these up to play, you go into window and we go into our ambience and we look at our scatter spot inspector. And in our scatter spot inspector, it will actually tell us which instance of that scatter spot asset is playing, how high up it is, and when the next playback is going to be, and whether it's playing now. If I move into the next space, and I walk inside the facility, I shouldn't get those dust ones anymore. Instead, I get different scatter shots again. This saves so much time understanding your debug of when things are going to fire. You might be hearing a sound that's going off and you think, no, that should be going off exactly every 4 seconds, or no, that should be going off as a part of a bigger system, or it should be not included here. And trawling through endless variations of scatter spots, especially ones that are like 90 seconds between one-shot firings, is going to be really difficult. So instead, they have this really cool scatter spot inspector that allows you to find out. The other debug that they have is this ambience inspector. And this is one of those ones that you'll pretty much have open forever, the whole time. And what it really does is shows you the item itself that is going to be contributing, and it's going to show you the volumes that they are a part of, because you do have two different types here. You have a SWEEJTECH ambience sound, which is an audio actor that you can just place that just overrides everything. So for example, I have the external overall, for instance, this exoplanet. Well, that's not going to be a volume. I don't need to make a volume for everything. I can just make a volume for the specific elements. I might have the same for the wind. Whereas the research facility, well, that's kind of important that that's a volume. So I can make a volume there that shows you a priority and a weighting and a level, which is a result of this priority and the weight of different volumes overlapping and all this different control that should allow you to turn up and down parts of the system. If I duck back in here, you can see, for instance, our weighting or our level, we are only hearing the interior research facility. We don't hear the external sound, we don't hear the winds, we don't hear the Rift's dark world thing, and we don't hear the external facility because we're inside and because our priority is higher and our weighting is full and therefore our level is full. The ambience component allows you to set a priority to say, interiors should always be higher than exteriors. You could go with a 10, 20, 30 system instead of a 1, 2, 3, 4 system. You can also have a max weight. The max weighting means that it can only contribute so much. It can't continue to contribute once it's full up and once it's assigned as much weight as it can, and its resulting weight will be as much as the max weight. And this means that it can only get so powerful. So if I have something like winds, I might not have the winds be able to contribute up to 1, because that might mean that at some point the winds are so strong, or I'm not near some volumes, or the priorities are a little bit strange, and I end up with just sort of lots of wind and no one-shots of a building that's really important has one-shots. Instead, you have this max weight and the current weight of the sound, and then the level or the resulting playback volume for the sound. And this means that you can, if you get to the edge of certain spots, I get to kind of maybe like here, right at the door, I get the weighting of the internal research facility, but I also get some external research facility. And I'm sure if I go further out, there you go, I'll even get the winds and elements like that back. Right? And these are all set as attenuation distances, that this little modifier that you can kind of add on top of our system. It's like if I'm on the staircase here, I don't want to be hearing the one-shots happening inside that apartment. I don't want to be hearing, or the research facility, I don't want to be hearing those one-shots. I don't want to be hearing the bed from inside it, or maybe I want to hear like a tiny bit of the bed, but definitely no one-shots. I want that to happen when they get inside. Now I could have the volume be bigger and smaller and then like rejection volumes and stuff, but the way that this system gets around this is just by having a max weight and a scatter spot threshold. So what I can do here is say that this scatter spot's threshold for the internal research facility, let's look at that one, is 1. Now that's to say that until the weight is 1, I don't get scatter spots at all. So if I'm at the edge of the door and it's at 0.68, I won't get any scatter spots. And that's a really handy way to get around the problem of on the edge of the door, but I start hearing scatter spots like outside where they clearly can't be outside. So instead, we just have this metric that allows us to kind of crossfade it based on that distance, that follow-through distance. Now, the research facility has a much more complicated scatter spots element. So when we look at the interior, and you can also see that I can override any of these, I could change them. So if I didn't want to make 1,000 different research facilities, but I wanted some research facilities to have like a certain respirator and others to not have that respirator, I could just override the scatter spots, put another one in, like add another entry for the scatter spot to say, hey, this one also has X respirator or B button or whatever, which is a great way to prevent the data asset buildup that comes with a lot of ambient systems and just general data systems. A lot of assets feels like a superpower for a while, and then needing to make changes, fewer assets feels a lot better. You can change and override any of these if we wanted to. You can even add reverb effects and chains and stuff. But these max weights and scatter spots really allow you to control both the one-shots that are firing, the bed that's crossing over between the different elements, and just the general picture of all of your ambience becomes very easy to control when you have the weighting of particular elements that you could turn up or down volumes of, and it's pretty solid really when you just think about a bed, the volume or not a volume, the one-shots or not one-shots of particular area types. I'd say that's where the heart of the system lies, with this element of area types and scatter spots together. But there are a couple of other features that you can use, like for instance, this research facility that I have, it's using this meta sound that is actually using an interface for the area type. I can use the area type to blend between two different elements, and that's how I can blend in some layers based on the weighting. If wind was one of the parts of this system and I wanted to have the wind howling around a corner and the metal shear and that kind of thing, I might have no metal shear, but then when you're up to a certain part of the volume where the weighting of the wind goes up, I can increase that metal shear and I can blend that in to the ambience. Using that is really simple by just, I think I'm literally, just comparing and routing the volumes that way, but you could do this in any number of different ways within Metasounds. A few different interfaces there of the area types to work out what the major area type is and to work out what the listener area type is. and elements like that. And the other thing is that it's also very easy to blueprint. The transition here where I go into the dark world, you might be thinking like, well, hang on, I'm not in another volume, so how does that work? I could either turn a volume on and just have a weighting be higher. That might be a really easy way to do it. Or I could change the weighting of the active versions that are happening. For instance, this rift here has an ambience, has a tag on it, has an ambience tag, this SWEEJ ambience. And this SWEEJ ambience allows me to pick what area type I want it to be. But at the start, I'm going to switch the max weight to off, make sure the scatter spot threshold is nice and high so it doesn't trigger, and just set the weight to off to make sure it can't even contribute. So it doesn't matter if I'm in the space standing right next to the object isn't the thing. I can control all of that from blueprints. So I can drag off the SWEEJ ambience and I could look for any sort of cool feature for the ambience is pretty open in terms of, so priority, amplitude, sound level. You can even change the scatter spots if you wanted to change them to something else when someone goes into rage mode. You want to change them so that everything sounds angry and screamy. Change the sound. And then there's these register and unregister components, and that's just to make sure that if you are placing an actor like the SWEEJ ambient sound, that'll just fire automatically. But in this instance, you don't even need to do that. I just have on play, I set some things up and register the component and then unregister it at the end. Really allows me to have a lot of control over my ambience. I can do volumes, I can do one-shots, I can do volumes with one-shots and blend them between two different states or many different states. They all kind of contribute. So if you don't want to have a only in, only out problem, you could use the crossfading to crossfade between many sources. It's a lot of fun to use. I've really enjoyed playing with it so far, and I think I'm going to be using it. I think I'm going to be using it for a while. Thanks so much for checking it out. I'll see you next time.